Welcome to CEO Insights. I'm Marilyn de Guzman with investingnews.com. My guest this episode is James Cross, CEO of ePower Resources, a graphite focused exploration and development company based in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Marilyn. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So we're talking about graphite. China currently dominates the global supply chain for graphite, and it has also recently imposed new export restrictions. What role do you see graphite-focused junior mining companies such as yourself? What do you see as what they play in this dynamic?
Well, the junior companies, especially in North America, are especially important because North America has virtually no domestic production of graphite. There's only one small producing mine in Quebec. The U.S. has no production at all. So the U.S. imports 100% of its graphite. China really uses all their graphite. There just isn't enough to go around. And the next largest source after China is East Africa, meaning Mozambique, Madagascar, and Tanzania. Now, Mozambique recently saw its top producer, I think its only producer, a very large mine run by an Australian company, shut down due to civil unrest. So with China and East Africa amounting to about 90% of the global production market, North America needs some kind of homegrown supply. And even just from a distance standpoint, it's pretty far away from your supply chain. So, there are only, I'd say, 10 significant projects in North America that can really make an impact on the looming supply deficit or graphite supply deficit in North America or really globally.
Mm-hmm. And that's including you. Maybe we can talk about your strategy as ePower Resources to set yourself apart from your other peers in the graphite space in North America.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should have mentioned, ePower's flagship project, Tetepisca, is one of those 10 significant North American projects. Now, 2 of those 10 projects are held by another company, Nouveau Monde Graphite, which has seen huge equity investments from in the hundreds of millions of dollars from General Motors, Panasonic, and Mitsui simultaneously. And so Nouveau Monde's graphite projects are essentially controlled by those industrial players now. So that leaves 8 really for everybody else. And it's also important to note that this, when we started the company, the big battery or the big driver behind graphite production was the increase in EV batteries, really. But now it's about much more than that. It's also about industrial self-sufficiency because, to give you an example, there's no defense industry without graphite. You absolutely have to have it for artillery, to make ships, to make missiles. You absolutely have to have it. So where does ePower fit into all that? We are one of those 10 projects. Remember, 2 are already spoken for. That leaves 8 for everybody else. Now, the continent, North America, probably needs about 38 projects, really, to be self-sufficient in graphite, and then the manufacturing that goes into products containing graphite. So, in our view, all those are going to be taken out by either industrial players or any company who wants to get into and control some graphite.
So maybe this is a good time to talk about your project. You mentioned the Tetepisca. You've recently reported some promising results from that property. Could you elaborate on those findings and their significance to your growth strategy?
Yeah, sure. One thing I should have mentioned about Tetepisca is it is very well positioned geographically to supply either the European market, because it has maritime, it's only about 3 hours from an important port. And that port is an interchange point where barge traffic going into the interior of North America in the Great Lakes switches to ocean-going vessel traffic. So you have easy maritime links to, say, Western Europe through Baie-Comeau, Quebec, which is that port near our project. And you also have ground transport and barge links to the rest of North America. So Tetepisca is the largest land package in what is known as the highest grade known graphite district in North America. And if you remember, I mentioned Nouveau Monde Graphite earlier. They have a project immediately adjacent to our Tetepisca project, which is probably the best graphite deposit in all North America. It's called the Ouatnon Project. And recently we reported some additional results discovering yet another target area on our property, which actually sits only 4.5 kilometers from the proposed pit at that project. So really 4.5 kilometers from the really, in my view, the best project in North America. But again, we need 30 more like it or more. And so what our strategy is we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. We're only looking for graphite from surface to maximum 100 meters deep. And we really start out using airborne surveys to find conductivity in the ground. And that's why one of the reasons graphite is so special. It conducts electricity very well, along with its heat resistance properties. So we find that conductivity, and then it's mapped with pretty good precision on the ground. And then we go walk that ground and look for places where the graphite protrudes the surface. And we can take samples of that and know it comes from a conductive body in the ground. And if you're getting at the surface, lots of good samples, it's quite possible that this represents a quite graphitic system, I suppose we could call it, from surface. So we just scour the ground and look for graphite that way. And right now what we're doing is developing target areas for resource delineation from surface. So we're kicking the stuff on the ground really and using those as targets. And then we do metallurgical test work on the graphitic rock we get from there to help us choose which target area gets the highest priority.
So when you're, based on your strategy, how far do you take this, I guess, particularly this Tetepisca, what's the plan for how far you're taking this project before, is it all the way to production? Or are you looking for partners, GVs? What's the strategy there?
Yeah, we actually, our intent is we're not trying to build a $1 billion company here or anything like that. Instead, our mission is really to find for someone else a critical link in their supply chain and be able to deliver it to them in exchange for cash, really. We're looking to monetize the graphite while it still sits in the ground. So we're just developing the project enough so that they can see, all right, this is a project that can, help us solve a problem. And that problem is a shiny new factory that needs graphite to produce anything, but there isn't any graphite. So we're in, I guess you can call it the problem-solving business. So the intent is not to deploy tremendous amounts of capital, but to deploy, and do massive drilling programs, and try to bring it to production, and go to investors for $500 million in CapEx. And we're not looking to do that. What we're looking to do really is just deploy small amounts of capital, and then, monetize that asset while it's still sitting in the ground. The aim is really exponential returns.
Right. And speaking of capital, you've announced a private placement. What initiatives do you intend to fund, and why is now the time to invest in e-power resources?
Yeah, well, right now, the macro picture around graphite supply and demand has never been better. when we started the company back in late 2018 and raised capital for what was then a private company, to take on the property we have and do some exploration work on it. Back then, we were predicting, a graphite crisis. Now that crisis is here. We don't have to predict it anymore. So the tailwind is there really for any good North American graphite project. So and if you remember, I was saying the industry needs maybe 38 of these projects rather than the 8 that are remaining. And the industrial players or anybody else wanting to get into graphite and control some of it, they're going to have to, take all these out. But retail hasn't really responded. So our share price is quite low. I won't spoil it. You can look it up for yourself, symbol EPR. But the share price is quite low. So retail investors still have the opportunity to front run those industrial players who are going to absolutely have to own, in my view, that project, and as well as the others. So that's the reason it's a good time to get in now.
I wonder if you could comment so you're focusing on graphite and the need for graphite North America wide is cannot be overstated enough, but amid that is the ongoing trade war, tariffs war, with the US. Like, how is that impacting your how you proceed or your planning for the future? Like, is that impacting it at all, or what are your thoughts on that?
Not really. It's not. At the moment, I think we're just seeing, that the stuff we're seeing is just, this is the negotiation, the tariffs on, tariffs off and all that. But can you put a tariff, especially a big tariff, on a raw material that your industry needs? The U.S. can't afford to put a tariff on graphite or electricity or oil or anything like that. This is just the negotiation. But if the U.S. only has 2 projects and probably needs at least 32, and for defense and self-sufficiency reasons, which is what, that's what they're all about. You need graphite, at least in Fortress North America. So we're not really worried about tariffs and uncertainty is always good for the resources business, because then that causes people to scramble to secure resources. So it's not something we're worried about. If anything, it's something we're kind of excited about.
Great. We'll leave it at that. Thanks again, James, for taking the time to share your insights today.
Great. Thanks, Mary Lynn. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. Join us again next time for another edition of CEO Insights.